All right, you guys. Hello, hello. I know it's been a while, but I'm so happy to be back. And I have a few announcements to make. So, I really wanted to have like a regular video show, but I was struggling a little bit with the format. And finally, I have come to a conclusion in terms of what I wanted to talk about. Because sometimes it's fintech, sometimes it's regulation, sometimes it's, current events, sometimes it's history or books that I read. And I kind of struggled to come up with a concept, what all these topics may have in common, other than my opinion. And then I realized that what I really like talking about is something that I would call uncommon wisdom, which is or uncommon sense, which is something where I kind of believe that something is true or there is like a concept or there is an explanation and it makes sense, but it may be counterintuitive or goes against certain expectations. And this is what I love talking about it. And maybe the biggest example I could give to illustrate this is this concept I learned from Peter Attia. He is an expert in longevity and a medical doctor, and essentially, I really like some of his books and some of his concepts. But there is one example that he gives, and this example is the common cause of death during the traffic accident. So he says that the most common situation where somebody has like a tragic death accident while driving is when somebody hits you from the left at the crossroads, and it happens because we all have been trained that we should look at the right and give way to people who are coming from the right side because we have to follow the rules. And as a result, we kind of ignore things that happen on our left side because it's not the rule. It's not how we have been trained. It's not what we expect that we have to follow. And then stuff happens, and then somebody comes from the left side, and potentially there is a tragic accident. So ideally, what you would want, like the driver's trainings and instructions to include, because this is the most common cause of like death during the traffic accidents, is that people should pay attention to what is happening on the left side, right? Because there is one thing to follow the rules, and we should follow the rules, but at the same time, we actually should be preventing like accidents and keeping ourselves alive. So we have to pay attention to what is happening on the left side. And this is exactly an illustration of what I would call like an uncommon sense. So, uncommon sense it is. I will be regularly now live streaming on my YouTube channel and the Substack, and you can find all the links below wherever you're watching this video. But here is the topic of the week for today. Um, Essentially, I have been following the Polymarket and other predictive markets with a lot of curiosity, but I wasn't really, sure if I should pay attention. Is it going to get big? Is it just a political thing? Is it, a form of entertainment? So I was curious, but I wasn't studying it, if you know what I mean. And recently, there were more and more cases, first of all, where European regulators started banning that. And also when, there were several cases of insider trading or potentially fraud where somebody would have, unpublic information and they tried to use this information to make bets. And because of that, there was this, backlash. Oh, Polymarket is bad. This is just a place where people do insider trading. It's almost the same as we were told. Oh, Bitcoin is just for people who want to deal drugs. That's pretty much the misconception. So I took some time to study this, and I realized that actually it's not a bad idea in a sense that, first of all, people who bet on a certain event, they actually put their money where their mouth is. and they have a skin in the game in the outcome. It may not be the skin in the game, and it probably shouldn't be the skin in the game in a direct sense where they can influence the event or whatever. But assuming that everybody is honest, people are just paying to be proven right. I believe that this is going to happen or whatever, right? So, and ideally, this should be a good source of information because it's like a crowdsourcing of the wisdom of the crowd, if you get what I'm saying. Like, let's park for the moment the idea of insider trading because most people who participate there probably are not able to have access to information that would give them some kind of insider insights around who's going to kidnap Maduro or what is happening with Google algorithms or any of that like political stuff, right? So most people who participate there just feel that I think this is going to happen. I have some intuition and I'm willing to put some money to prove I'm right. So, nothing wrong with that. Actually, it could be a very good source of information. And funnily enough, one of the biggest income streams of Polymarket is um, the API they offer to Bloomberg and some other news agencies and economic portals where people want to know what is the signal, what is the sentiment around certain events, because very often the predictions on Polymarket are accurate. And the reason why I feel like European regulators and even Swiss regulators are wrong in terms of how they view poly markets and predictive markets in general is this. So they say this is gambling. This is similar to betting on the outcome of the horse riding or whatever, the casino. They have a point in the sense that uh, this is betting on a certain event. But where I think they got it completely wrong is there is no house, right? There is no house that is like setting the bets, and there is no house in a sense that can influence certain algorithms because it is blockchain based. They settle in USDC on the Polygon network. So, in that sense, it is super transparent. Of course, it may not be transparent in terms of where do you get your insights about this or that event, but I mean, this is manipulation or insider trading, which is a separate problem, right? It has nothing to do with the structure of the platform. Um, and because of that, I do feel that actually the CFTC that decided to regulate this market and issued relevant financial license for this activity, I think this is right because this is closer to, I would say, binary options or maybe some kind of other forms of futures or derivatives. And I believe it is a financial service and it should be regulated as a financial service. But Europeans are like, nah, we don't like it. We just don't want it. We block it, whatever. And I was like, but why? You allow gambling, you allow a lot of other activities, horse riding, uh, bets, and sports bets. So you have fantasy sports bets. So you allow that. Why would you ban Polymarket? So it took me a while, and recently I realized, oh, they actually don't like this opinion that is kind of formed in the decentralized way to be okay. Okay, guys, apologies. I think my computer got overheated. I wanted to do live stream in a nice surrounding, but now we have to do it in house, and probably I don't need my sunglasses. But anyway, so we're back. Um, so And that's where I do have a problem with how Europeans treat Polymarket and similar things, because saying something is gambling or something is like super speculative gives this platform a stigma. And refusal to regulate it as a financial service kind of closes a lot of doors in terms of how you could fund it, how you could exit the funds, how it can be taxed, etc., etc., etc. So, by categorizing these platforms as like gambling, Europeans essentially say we don't like these platforms to be a source of an independent opinion or a signal that is valid and has some kind of credibility. We want to eliminate it. And this is so funny because actually that was the reason how this platform became popular in the first place. It was kind of a niche market, and then its volumes, I believe, like 10x or even like 15x before the US presidential elections in 2024. And after that, it kind of, totally exploded and became super popular because it was proven right with respect to the political predictions. And after that, I believe Peter Thiel, he gave this platform some money. They were able to acquire a licensed entity, and they were able to re-enter the US market. And at the end of the day, they were acquired by a parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. So they came from like totally outlawed, like niche player that was penalized into the same category as the New York Stock Exchange, which is kind of fun in itself. Um, yeah, so if you're curious about Polymarket, if you don't have your own opinion, please follow me on LinkedIn and Substack. I published like in-depth article on that topic, and I believe that I did like a thorough research trying to present both sides of the um, not equation, but both sides of the spectrum in terms of favorable and unfavorable opinions about Polymarket. But my opinion, it should be regulated as a financial service and not as gambling. Um, and actually, speaking of Peter Thiel, who founded that, you know how Peter Thiel is famous for being 5 to 10%, 10 years earlier to make a judgment call on certain events in comparison to everybody else. Like he approved Trump in 2016, and he was actually very quiet and absent during the recent campaign. I mean, political campaign in the US. I recently learned that he exited NVIDIA. I recently learned that he started exiting Palantir. Funnily enough, he bought some shares of Apple and Microsoft. I mean, I understand Microsoft because of OpenAI stake, but I am not sure why Apple. But still, kind of interesting. And he moved to Argentina, so I guess it's not a favorable sign for the U.S. as a jurisdiction in terms of where do you live, where do you, uh, where do you make decisions, where do you locate your family, and also where you keep your money. So I would say that's interesting in terms of Peter Thiel. I actually want to do a little bit deeper research probably during the coming week, and I will share with you my observations about his financial decisions or certain bets that he makes either like financially or otherwise, because usually he's right. He's not right in the sense that he's not on the top of the hype, right? But he is contrarian, and he's right like 5 years before everybody jumps into a certain bandwagon. That's the type of right that Peter Thiel is. It's not a judgment like in terms of morality. It's purely like economic judgment and correlation of what Peter Thiel does and what becomes popular or unpopular like 5 to 10 years later. Okay, So anyway, I'm so glad to be back, and I hope that this temporary interruption when my computer overheated during the like midstream is like reasonable enough and doesn't interrupt your ability to follow my thoughts. But yeah, I'm back. I am fully committed to doing these live videos every Sunday around midday, wherever I am, usually European time. And I really feel like I want to find topics or examples or opinions or some kind of points of interest or even past literature or historical events where I feel like something is valid and accurate and legit, but doesn't represent common sense or common wisdom. That's what I'm super passionate about, and that's what I want to share. Anyway, have a wonderful Sunday and see you here next weekend. Bye, guys.